EC Medical Inc. in Thousand Oaks. He's a senior member of IEEE and has 20 years of experience in various roles at St. Jude Medical, Intel, and BD. And our guest speaker tonight is Marc Hornbeek. Marc is the principal consultant for DevOps for Trace3. He has over 37 years of experience in architecting, designing, developing, managing high-performance solutions for IT infrastructure that are deployed in commercial and government applications globally. I won't go through the whole biography because that's what you're going to hear about tonight. But Marc is also, I believe, senior member of IEEE. So thank you for coming, and take it away. Oh, one last thing. Before you leave, make sure you sign in if you didn't get a chance to, the sign-in sheets back there on one of those tables, just so we get credit for IEEE. That's it. Thank you.
Well, welcome everyone to the IEEE Extraordinary Live series. This is the third in our series, and this series was really designed to really honor members such as Marc, who have an extraordinary career and made a big impact in many people's lives that live among us in Ventura County. So we're very happy to have Marc here tonight. So, Marc, I think the first question that everybody has on their mind is, what exactly is DevOps? That's the area of expertise that you have and done a lot of work. Maybe you could explain to us with a slide what that means.
Sure. Let's flip the slide.
I can drive if it helps.
Yeah, it might be easier. Yeah.
So first of all, DevOps as a word is relatively new. It was kind of coined in 2009 by a gentleman, Patrick Dubois, who was a QA consultant in Belgium, working with a Belgian bank. And he found he kept having to go back and forth between the dev people, the development side, and the ops people that were operating their systems, and getting them to agree on the test results and to work together. So that's kind of where the word came from. But in reality, DevOps means a lot of things, and even the experts don't completely agree on what the word means. If you were to Google search the word DevOps, you'd find a lot of people are asking the question, what is DevOps anyways? So maybe we can flip the slide. The fundamental idea of DevOps is you've got dev people, they're developing applications or software, and you've got operations people that are operating it, and trying to get them to work together is the kernel of the idea of DevOps. And this occurs in large enterprises where you have, let's say, a bank, people writing code for their bank applications on the dev side. And then on the ops side, you've got a myriad of servers across their bank network. And the dev people are anxious to write new code and new features, whereas the ops people are saying, please don't change anything. We're responsible for keeping everything working well. And that's not very efficient. Essentially, that becomes two silos of activity. How do you get them together working more efficiently is really what DevOps is all about. At the heart of it has to do with business fundamentals, making the business more efficient. And to do that, you want dev and ops working closer together. So there's cultural aspects to that. Why don't we flip the slide again? Then there's also process aspects. This chart is kind of the process view of DevOps. There isn't really an agreement as to what DevOps is, but I think most people involved in DevOps would agree with what's on that chart. At the heart of it, there's a pipeline of activities going on between when work is identified at the backlog level and all the way through to the live production operation. And there's different stages of activity from design, creating software, integrating the software, packaging it, building it, making it ready for deployment in a staging environment, and then deploying it. So all of those things are called a pipeline. In order to serve that pipeline, there are a lot of steps. So the development has a little pipeline of activities in order to prepare changes for integration. And then there's an integration pipeline. They call it continuous integration because in DevOps everything is happening continuously. And then there's a delivery pipeline there. You're preparing the software to be deployed, but not deployed yet. And finally, deployment means move it into real production, have it operating. In order to even serve that, you have collaborative end-to-end workflows, getting people to work together to do that, from both the dev end and the ops end of the pipeline, and orchestrating the infrastructures as well to make it efficient. You can't afford to have everybody to have the maximum capability across the pipeline, so instead you have elastic capability that is sort of stretched on demand. If someone in dev wants to run a production-sized test, they can do that. On the other hand, when they don't need it, because they're not doing that all the time, they can kind of give it back to the pool of resources, and those resources can be available for other people or other parts of the pipeline. And finally, just monitoring, to keep track of it all. One of the big challenges in DevOps is the ops guys are saying, hey, I don't know what dev is doing. Well, you need monitoring capability so that the ops guys can see what dev is doing and vice versa, so they don't get surprised when the new feature comes along and they're more ready for delivery and deployment at that point. So that's kind of a process view of what is DevOps. I think there's just one more chart. I know this is related to a blog I did, which I think explains some of the complexities of DevOps and how to make it really work. I call it 7 pillars of DevOps. There's really 7 practice areas involved in DevOps. Culture, integration, testing, monitoring, infrastructures, delivery and deployment are all the pillars. And the idea is to really make a successful DevOps, you have to keep all of these in balance. You might not have the optimum culture to get started, but you need to have at least an agreement that you're going to work together. And similarly, you might not have the optimum, let's say, continuous integration, but over time, you can, as long as you keep all of these things in balance, you can ultimately get a better and better DevOps. That's kind of a long-winded way of saying what is DevOps. And unfortunately, I think that is necessary in order to really explain the perspective of what is DevOps.
Mark, how did you get started in this area? Have you what got you interested in? I assume engineering as a field.
Yeah.
And is there any like your childhood, your parents, or just relatives or other people you look up to when you were young? How do you maybe describe to us a little bit about how you got into engineering and maybe into DevOps finally?
Yeah, certainly. You can flip. There's another slide on it.
That's there we go.
Another one. Yeah. There we go. So in the beginning, I would blame it on my dad. Actually, he was a pretty good soul, but I grew up in an environment where he didn't have a lot of money, but he was a builder, so I used to help him with construction. And he really didn't know much about tools. And DevOps is all about tool soup. There's a myriad of tools. So I learned in a pretty early age that using good tools can accelerate work. And with construction projects, I soon found out that hammering nails is hard, and digging ditches and things could help. And just he used to use manual tools. So at one time bought him I think I was 12, and I bought him an electric circular saw for the first time. He built entire houses without electric tools. It was unbelievable. And he was good at it, but I was introducing him to tools. And I think this idea of using tools to save labor, especially for myself at the time, was kind of how I got interested in tools. And that led to a series of activities. So somebody said, hey, how about becoming an electrician? It's easier than digging ditches and hammering nails. And the tools are easier. You've got these little meters and things. It's kind of cool. So that was a good idea. In high school, my teacher said, no, you should be a technician, an electronics technician. So that's actually me in a high school picture in front of an oscilloscope. And it seemed like, being an electronic technician, working with little circuits and everything is even easier than an electrician. And that's actually walk around and do laborious things, moving equipment and so on. And a little while further along, somebody said, no, you shouldn't. My physics teacher said, no, you should be an electrical engineer. I had no idea what an engineer was. He took me to the university, the local university of Canada, the Queen's University, and I saw these folks working on drafting boards, drawing circuits and things. I thought, wow, this looks easier than an electronic technician. So, new types of tools and things. So I always moved towards easier and easier things to do with higher levels of tools. And so you go to college and you find out electrical engineering, there are lots of tools and it's a lot of fun, but I was introduced to software. Software seemed easier than hardware, and there were another whole series of tools. So I thought, well, maybe I should do software. And then after college, I heard about things like, eventually it led to things like cloud computing and virtual. Well, that seemed easier than software. And automation seemed like it would be a good idea. I was involved in a lot of testing and test tools and stuff like that. Testing is very laborious if you don't have the right tools. So again, it was kind of gravitating towards tools and saving labor, right? And along came DevOps, right? And DevOps actually is tool soup. There's all kinds of tools from the beginning of that pipeline all the way to the end. So it's kind of a natural progression in some ways, and bringing together the development end, the ops side, the QA side, pulling it all together with a lot of tools seems to be almost a natural progression for me personally.
So, given your journey, through here that you described to us, maybe could you share with us some of the highlights, or downside of the career path that you've taken, something that is memorable, interesting?
Sure. I actually think a lot of the early work I did at Bell Northern Research was quite memorable. I didn't know it at the time. I was fresh out of college, and I was sent to Germany with the first packet switch, putting it in on my own because it was over the holidays and nobody else wanted to go. But soon realized that there was a whole world of packet switching, and got involved in that. And again, the first activity over there, the salesman came along and said, "Hey, how about showing me a demo of this packet switch?" He brought along some customers from the Deutsche Bundespost from DC, and said, "Give me a demo." And he said, "It's not working yet. I need a demo." Okay, so I said, I've got a test tool that I worked on that will send packets and receive packets. I could show you that. Yeah, I need a demo. So I showed him that demo, and after that, I don't know what he said in German to the customer, but they ended up buying a whole lot of packet switches after that. So that was certainly memorable. But the whole idea of packet switching, networking, and testing is something that, again, I got involved in heavily. I ended up at Bell Northern becoming responsible for all of their test technology across the company. We had some pretty cool stuff going on. That to this day is really, I would even call it state-of-the-art DevOps tooling, but it was only for that company. It wasn't commercial. So we did a lot of monitoring tools, a lot of testing tools, a lot of field applications, and deployment tools that help move the pipeline of features from dev all the way through deployment within that company. I ended up publishing lots of papers about it, getting lots of recognition. So I really enjoyed that experience. After that, I came to California with my family and worked at Tech-Elect. We did a lot of commercial testing and test automation tools for protocol. I was involved in helping create a standard for a protocol notation called the tree and tabular combined notation, which is I think it's the only internationally standardized protocol test notation to this day, and it's used for describing protocol tests for many applications, including today the automated automobile protocols and things like that. Next generation automobiles are using a lot of TTCN-based test standards. That's one application. Other than that, more recently I've been getting more involved in DevOps. I'm working on a standard with the IEEE on DevOps, and been publishing a lot of papers about DevOps and lots of conferences about DevOps and help educate people that want to understand what is DevOps, which, as we saw, is easier said than explained sometimes.
Do you have any is your career always on the upside, or did you have periods of your life where things were not as smooth as it could be, and how did you overcome that and learn from those periods of time?
Oh, I've had lots of challenges in my life. It was true. Yeah, moving countries by itself was a challenge. I moved from Ontario, Canada, to California in the early '90s, and with a family that. My kids were speaking French at the time, so integrating them here was part of it. But and just getting used to different cultures. There is a difference in cultures, so that was a challenge. But work-wise, I'd say that I don't really feel I had that many what I call insurmountable challenges. I've had a progression, and I think many of the things I've learned have built one on top of the other, and I feel comfortable where I am.
So what are some of your inspirations and lessons that you have learned in your career that you can share with our audience here?
Okay, sure. Well, I find a lot of engineers, they don't really have a game plan for their career. They go through one job after the other. They need to make a buck and feed their families, but not necessarily that satisfying unless it would be better to have kind of a game plan. Pick a horse and ride it kind of thing. What do you want to be ultimately? Be careful what you pick because you probably will get it if you work on it. I do find that they get into a position where they want to be like a general manager or a business manager. They get there and they want to like do it. But generally, think hard about what do you really want to do, and then work towards that. And don't expect to have all the answers yourself. Be open to learning and networking, like events like tonight, and try to better yourself all the time. Try to somehow contribute to others while you're doing that. I think that's very satisfying.
When do you think is the future of the industry?
Of the DevOps industry?
Yes.
Yeah, so I actually believe that DevOps, there's some analogies to the advanced manufacturing. In the early 90s, the manufacturing industry went through upheaval because of just-in-time, lean manufacturing methodologies, where you had assembly lines that were kind of siloed. Somebody building carburetors had no idea what was going on with the brake ends of the assembly line and so on and didn't care. But then along came Toyota and some of those advanced methods and helped bring it all together into a more integrated assembly line. And that has gone through multiple iterations over the years. And today, the advanced manufacturing has a lot to do with automation, robots, analytics, driving those robots in an automated fashion. I think DevOps is similar. It's a pipeline, it's an assembly line, not for equipment, but for software, if you look at that pipeline. And I think it will go with a similar path, where ultimately it will be more automated. It's already quite automated, but using advanced analytics, automatically tying the analytics back together with automation, I think that's where it will ultimately end up, higher and higher levels of automation using analytics.
So where are you? Where are you working now, and where do you see, the future for yourself? What's your plan or your dream, beyond here?
Okay, I'm working at a company called Tracery, and I'm the principal consultant for the DevOps practice. So I've put together a consulting approach methodology for the company. So I'm building that as a base and trying to help their clients, which is a pretty broad set of enterprise clients with DevOps. My long term is retirement from here in about 5 years. So between now and then, I want to learn to be a better consultant. And in retirement, I don't imagine I'll be doing it just playing golf or something. I want to be an author and a part-time consultant. probably writing mostly about things like process engineering and DevOps or related things.
Have you written any books so far?
I have written a lot of articles, and I have a book in the works.
Oh.
Yes, and I publish a lot on DevOps.com and making things like that. Yeah, I'm also writing some course material for the DevOps Institute at the moment.
Is DevOps something that is taught at the university now in today's curriculum?
That's starting to happen. Not so much at universities, as far as I know, but there are starting to be places where you can get DevOps training. The DevOps Institute is the notable one, but there are some others, DESA and some others that are starting. Actually, AWS is offering some DevOps training as well. Amazon. There are others. Certifications are also starting to become possible. Again, Amazon, DevOps Institute. I'm not so sure that it's hit the university circuit yet. I'm not aware of that. If it has, I could see that happening.
At this time, I'd like to open up the floor or question to the audience. This is one aspect of the program where there's active participation from the audience. So you guys feel free to ask a question, and we'll pass the mic around so you can ask Mark a question or two. We usually have very good participation. Almost everybody asks at least one question.
Yeah, you have a quota.
I'm ashamed you would do it.
Thanks for giving us this interesting talk. One thing you mentioned is the importance of learning. So I was wondering, what do you recommend as what are good ways to continue to build upon your knowledge? What type of resources have you used in your career to maintain?
Myself, I like to read books where they're available, or at least articles. So that's readily available for DevOps. And they don't all agree with each other, but there are certain, in the DevOps space, there's certain books that are must-reads. There's one called The Phoenix Project, which is the most famous one by Gene Kim. It's very easy to read. It's like a novel. It's not a typical technical book. And then he's recently published, in fact, just this last month, kind of a follow-up called The DevOps Handbook, which also is a pretty easy read. It's not your typical technical book either. It's a little closer to that, but it has lots of anecdotes and case studies in it. There are some more technically oriented books on DevOps. The Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble. So I think books are a low-cost, easy way to continue your education. Everybody has, the day job they have to keep up with it. So, you can always fit in some time to read. Other than that, the network there's a lot of research resources available on the network. So, CB Insights is a good research tool. There's a lot of good websites.
How about meetup groups?
Yeah, networking is critical. So meetups at the IEEE is a good source of information. And just meeting other people, because nobody knows it all. Nobody. It's all about connecting with each other and being open to sharing something. Quid pro quo. If you share something, maybe you'll get something back. Yeah.
I'll ask a follow-up. You already almost answered it with networking, and how do you utilize, or when you do networking, you meet people, what's the best way that you get to the sharing of the information, to understanding where they come from? Is it just small talk and get to know them, or is it do you have any networking tips as far as talking to others and learning from them?
Well, I can't say I'm an expert networker myself, but I would say that, it's always good if you establish some rapport and trust with whoever you're talking to, and kind of have, it's sort of what I was saying before, have an agenda for yourself, an area that you sort of feel comfortable and want to grow. So probe in that area, whatever yours is. In my case, it's DevOps. So that gives me a topic to engage with. So that's a good way. And you're sincerely interested in it, so you're going to come across sincere, and they're probably going to respond if they have any interest at all. If they don't, then maybe it's not somebody you want to network with because it's not something you want. But usually you're going to networking groups. There are some birds of a feather that want to exchange similar information.
Hey, good. Can you hear it? Is this working? Okay, I'll talk loud. When you were first getting started with the DevOps, as you were moving like a group from what they were doing, what were some of the ways that you convinced the company that actually let's go down this path and let's start making investments, both in equipment, people, and time?
Well, okay, so you're probably referring to with my work at Spirent in particular. Yeah, I wouldn't even claim that I was the prime mover on that one, but I was definitely involved in helping to set it up and evolve it. But I would say my real beginnings of DevOps went back even to Bell Northern, where we were doing massive builds for 8,000 internal engineers, and that was a group effort. My real role in that was more of the in between Dev and Ops, all the QA automation and all the tools for that. It was initially volunteer. Groups didn't have to use what we were doing, but we had some early successes, and with those successes, there were quality, stability of the product type successes. And more of the company, different groups were mandated that they had to try to use some of these tools and common approaches. And eventually it became burned into their culture. I used to say that I wish I had a dollar for every time I had to convince people to use them. Back then, I would be a rich man. It was constantly having to sell the idea. I knew it was the right thing to do. And over time it built up from what was, when I started, it was 2 engineers working on 2 tools for one department. And by the time I had left Bell Northern, we had 125 engineers, a team of PhDs, serving 13 labs around the world, 8,000 engineers, and a lot of tool projects, and all working in synchrony with all the dev and ops activities in the company, across the company. But it didn't happen just because of one project. It took years. I was there for 13 years.
So one more question. Thinking of your tools, what's one that is your favorite? When you said DevOps, so this is the coolest thing you've used.
Well, the coolest tool that I was involved in developing, in my opinion, was actually still back at Bell Northern. We had something called Network Process Monitor, which I haven't seen anything like it since, honestly. It was kind of like an embedded monitoring tool that you could program it to orchestrate activities within any process in the entire network across the world. And then you could control it remotely. They used to keep it under lock and key. The ops companies wouldn't let it out. There were sometimes multiple levels of security around that thing because it literally could do anything in the network. You could do things like intercept packets, change the code and send them on without anybody even knowing. That was fairly dangerous. But in terms of a DevOps tool, it was really powerful. You could use that tool for validating builds, for validating, for testing things that would otherwise require large configurations because you could simulate things that from the inside out. So it was a gray box kind of tool environment, which is really powerful in the DevOps world. If you can use gray box techniques together with black box techniques, you can simulate, a lot of things that you'd otherwise need massive amounts of equipment for. Commercial tools today, Jenkins is probably as good as, it's the most popular one anyway, as kind of the automation backbone for the majority of DevOps installations. I think I'd have to say that's the most popular one. It's not necessarily the most technically advanced one, but it's pretty good.
Anybody?
Yeah, I got a question.
Hello? Nothing?
Try and hold it down, the button.
There we go. Off and on.
I want to
Signal
know.
come.
I want to know about the wizard picture that kind of looks like you.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, this is kind of a fun thing my son and I were doing. I found that when I go to these DevOps conferences and so on, I'm usually the oldest one in the room. So I started to call myself DevOps the Gray. And also it came from the fact that I've been recently talking about DevOps evolution and next generation DevOps and kind of predicting the future. So the idea of a wise wizard is sort of the moniker. It goes along with the moniker. Trusted advisor. It's just for fun. And it's also almost Halloween now, so what the heck.
Yeah. I saw that it seems that you make everything easier and work with a lot of people. So if some people they work and when they're familiar with the system and they think it's very easy, so they change, they modify and everything, and how you control the system.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, it's easy to get out of control actually if you don't have someone keeping track of the evolution of something, whether it's a tool or this whole, if you like, systems of systems. Because DevOps is really not a system. It's really a system of systems where you've got orchestration going on at multiple layers in order to really orchestrate that entire pipeline. And yeah, I can get out of control real fast. There have been lots of what I'd call dev oops situations. You don't want to have an automated deployment tool that deploys bad quality all the time. That's a bad thing. There's some notable cases, right? Knight Capital is probably the most notable case where they, because of some bad deployments, they went from a $365 million company to minus $40 million company in 47 minutes. That's a bad deployment. You can read about it. So yeah, keeping control of the process is critical. Change control on the tools themselves, having a strategy, having experts that are keeping track of it is part of how you control it. You don't just say, oh, let's use the most fancy tool. You won't necessarily get the results you would expect. If you add high-performance carburetor on a normal engine, guess what? Your engine won't even work. Right? You want to make sure that all that part of what I meant when I said the 7 pillars of DevOps, keeping everything in balance. And part of it is governance as well. That part of that culture is collaborating and making sure that everybody agrees with the changes that are going on.
Anyone else?
Just kind of wondering who's going to carry the torch after you.
Who's going to carry the torch after me?
Right.
Am I going somewhere?
You said you're retiring in 5 years.
Retiring in 5 years.
There are lots of people involved in leadership in DevOps. I'm not anywhere near the number one. There are a lot of luminaries in the DevOps world. But yeah, I think a lot of, if you read Jess Humple's books, Gene Kim and related authors, there's a lot of people that can, there are a lot more famous in DevOps than I am. I think my main contribution is just helping people understand it and helping to implement the right balance and keeping it under control, as you mentioned, while you do that. Because I've seen a lot of DevOps implementations that are not in balance. They're implemented by really smart engineers. A lot of them are do-it-yourselfers because they know they are the smartest engineers in town, but they don't know all 7 pillars, so things get out of whack, and they end up having a failed system. That's the trick. It's not just technology. There's a lot of cultural aspects, and just being aware that you really need to have a well-balanced system of systems. I don't know whether I answered your question.
I just have a question, if you don't mind. Thank you. So, we talk about DevOps a lot, but I know you as a manager, and I've heard many people say that you are the best manager they ever have. So what is your philosophy on management, engineering management basically? What is your main philosophy in managing engineer that people love you so much for that?
Well, that's very kind of you. I think you just have to respect people. It's as simple as that. Try to get to know what they can do well and focus on that. Too many HR systems these days, in my opinion, focus on critical reviews, and then you spend all year trying to find out why someone's not good at something and trying to correct them on that, rather than saying what are they good at, and let's build on it. And also, the idea of a performance review, in some ways, sometimes not implemented in the correct way, in my opinion. It's often backwards. They spend a lot of time criticizing what you didn't do, rather than helping you understand what you should do, and help you put in place what is needed to help you do that. So if you spend more time on goal setting and understanding how you help someone accomplish those goals, oftentimes it does involve interaction with others. So as a manager, try to make sure that each individual has the right linkages so they can succeed with each other and individually, rather than just criticizing them when they don't get something done that probably wasn't properly set, goals that weren't properly set in the first place.
Yeah, and follow up to that question, I think you showed a chart of satisfaction versus pay, I believe. And we had consulting and research. Research was sort of higher satisfaction and lower pay. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, you tried these various paths or different type of positions. Which one is your favorite in terms of all the positions that you've held?
Well, I think all of us have to have a paycheck, so that's always part of it. Despite the fact that I don't think pay per se is a motivator, it sure is a demotivator if you don't have enough to pay your bills. So pay has got to be, you have to decide for yourself what kind of lifestyle you want to live, and make sure you have enough to cover that. Otherwise, you're going to be unhappy, or you need to change your aspirations of what your lifestyle is. Which is okay. Not everybody wants to be the next billionaire. There's certainly some billionaires that definitely wouldn't want to be. But the other thing is just plain satisfaction, right? No matter how much you're paid, are you doing something you like to do? From my own point of view, I like to do research. I like to learn things. I have kind of a philosophy that may be extreme, but I think the only thing that's fun in life is learning. If you think of it, the only thing. And research allows you to have a life of learning. But it doesn't pay the bills necessarily unless you're maybe a research institute. Most people, it's not enough to make an income. So finding that right balance for you individually is valuable. For me, pure research doesn't pay the bills enough, but consulting is a way to do a little research, but also pay the bills. I've been senior manager, even executive level manager before. Money was good, stress level was too high. I didn't find it all that satisfactory. The leadership part I liked, the working with people part, but politics is not so fun. The consulting, for me, is a better balance, at least at this point in my life. I think what you want, your interests and your will evolve over your career. Sure. I don't think I would have wanted to be a consultant at the beginning of my career, and I wouldn't have been capable anyways. But, at this point, that's what I would.
So, Mark, what does your practice involve now? Give us a kind of a sense of what does a consultant?
DevOps consulting practice?
Yeah.
Okay. So, a typical day, I'll get called from some in our company, a customer typically that has a problem, and they'll ask me to go out and work with the customer on site, or sometimes just over the network. And if it's a DevOps, the ideal situation is the customer has a big problem saying we need DevOps, we tried it, we failed. Come in and tell us, what to do. And so we actually had created a practice. It's 5 weeks worth of work, basically. It starts with a 2-week workshop where we go through a set of tools. Wouldn't you be surprised at these tools? And help the customer understand their goals, because they usually don't have a clear understanding of their goals. There's 20 goals for DevOps in 6 categories, and we help them understand really specifically, where are you now against this goal? Where do you want to be by when? And then prioritize those. That alone is valuable. Helping the customer understand what their goals are. And then from there, we do gap analysis. Okay, if those are your goals, what is your current situation in terms of tools, infrastructure, culture? And we have tools to assess those things. And then you do a workflow analysis to say, all right, for each of the stages in the pipeline, what exactly do we do today? And let's diagram that in a workflow diagram, which also demonstrates the tools, the gates, and decision points. Map it all out in a long string of workflow diagrams, identify where the weaknesses are, and relate that back to the goal priorities, and then build a canonical solution, which will say, all right, if those are your goals, where do we need to change things in your workflow to match your goals? Not everybody can implement. They probably won't get to all 20 goals in one phase, so you have to put a phased implementation plan. And that's kind of where the secret sauce is, and I don't think there's too many people that know how to do this. If you have a goal, for example, let's speed up deployment. So instead of having one release a month, we're going to have one release every 2 weeks. But at the same time, we want to improve quality by 50%. Like if we have 50% fewer customer found defect coming back from releases. Those are conflicting goals. How do you actually accomplish that? That's part of the trick. So that's also part of the consulting practice. I've developed a methodology that you can actually work out a solution that can do that. I did a process model on DevOps, and you can kind of work the goals, from the goals backwards to say, if those are the goals, then what amount of system do I need in the integration phase, in continuous testing, in the deployment phase, in order to match those goals? Clearly, if you have a goal that say, I want to do a release every 2 weeks, then your build process has to be able to match that kind of cadence. You can't have a build process that takes 2 days to make builds. If you want to make a release every 2 weeks, it better be faster than that. So you can kind of work it backwards. And then the ultimate result is to produce a report with interactions with the client that shows them the roadmap and the architectural view of how to actually implement a DevOps solution that matches their business goals. So that's an example of what a DevOps consultant does.
So it's highly customized to the customer.
There's no single DevOps implementation. I call it, it's like snowflakes. Every DevOps is beautiful but different. There is no standard. I think over time there'll be more and more standardization, at least standardizing to the level I was discussing, the overall workflows and pipelines in general. But in terms of having actual, let's say, integrated circuit that does DevOps, I think we're a long way from that. There are some movements towards something like that. At the last Jenkins World Conference a few weeks ago, there was an announcement of a consortium of tools companies called DevOps Express that are coming together to say, hey, work with us, we're pre-integrating everything, and we can provide them an entire DevOps tool chain to satisfy some needs. But if you look at the list of clients, it's not going to satisfy the majority of the customers out there. Some are going to prefer other tools for different reasons. So it's still not really standard, but it's kind of moving in the direction of having more and more tools that are pre-integrated together.
I assume that different industry groups would have basically different architecture, but all the companies within, say, the banking or retail or medical companies would have solutions that are much more similar to each other than with other industry categories.
Yeah, there are different genres. I call it genres of DevOps. If you're a manufacturing company, you tend to be heavy on the dev end, where you have a lot of complex development going on, maybe even embedded code and layers of code. And maybe the ops side is not so big because they're delivering to some equipment or deliverable system. But then if the other end is like a bank or an enterprise that maybe doesn't have as much debt, but they have a lot of ops. So the tools that they might choose are different. You maybe would spend more money on the dev end of tools in a dev-oriented, genre of DevOps versus one that's more ops-oriented, and they might spend more money on the ops side. I don't think there's anybody on the planet, any company that can afford to have a complete set of commercial DevOps tools to make an entire pipeline. There's so many tools involved to make that entire pipeline, so each situation is a little different. They'll tend to put in place the more high-quality, more expensive tools for those areas that are more important to them, and then maybe go with open source or lower cost tools for the portions that are not quite as critical for that particular operation.
Very good.
Okay.
If there are no more questions, I will thank Marc for coming here tonight to speak to us. Thank you. To commemorate the event, we have a flag for you.
Oh, thank you very much. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder what tool made this. Very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.